Hello viewers of The Pioneer, how are you doing? I hope you're healthy and well, as always. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring you the latest developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. I hope that the war leaders of the Ukrainian armed forces are also following our reports, because this situation has become a little more difficult for Ukraine. And let us emphasize this. Of course, the war is still ongoing. However, if the improvements to be made on the front line are also made on the time, the problems will grow. Since we're examining the situation as an outsider, we can comment on the subject more easily. According to the latest reports, the personnel of the Ukrainian armed forces continue their defense operations quite successfully. In particular, we have to say that the Ukrainian artillery units have a very important place in the defense war. More equipment is needed for the continued success of the Ukrainian artillery units. Russian troops, on the other hand, have certain weak points. Most importantly, the attack strategies of the old-fashioned Russian commanders. Let's take a look at the daily map report, where we will also address this. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring the Russia-Ukraine war to your screens. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. You can also support me and my hard-working team by using the super thanks button below the video. Thank you in advance for your support. Let's start if you are ready, the Pioneer reports. Let's start by looking at the latest developments on the Zaporizhia front line. Let's see area on the map. Let's get this out of the way right away. The Russian army continues to attack Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of the Robotyne. We have just talked about the problems of the Russian army. The Russian army has been attacking in this area for almost weeks. Despite all the efforts, they still have not achieved any results here. However, the persistent attacks here have still not yielded results. This is one of the biggest problems of the Russian army. Although the Russian army has not been able to make progress here for 2 weeks, it is persistently continues its attacks, just like our users who persistently say that I'm an artificial intelligence. Yes, I am. By the way, let's state it again. Dear viewers, I'm not an artificial intelligence. As I mentioned before, artificial intelligence has not yet reached the point where it can report as well as the Pioneer. That might be a little bit selfish. Let's get back to our main topic. Russian troops continue to attack the western part of the Robotyne. However, the Ukrainian defense forces are still resiliently holding their positions. Perhaps a withdrawal operations of the Ukrainian army would be useful here. However, this should not be in straight retreat. Ukrainian troops should heavily trap the areas where they retreat. In this way, the Russian troops entering the region can be prevented from suffering heavy losses. It would be useful to adopt a similar strategy in the Verbov region. There are numerous reports that the Ukrainian army is preparing for a new offensive. The more losses the Russian army suffers during the preparation of the offensive, the more advantageous the Ukrainian army will be. Let us continue with the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest reports, artillery units of the Russian armed forces targeted positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in Robotyne, Molotov-Makhcha, Orikhiv, and Pyatykhatki directions. In turn, artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted the positions of the Russian armed forces in Ichenko, Kopany, Novoprokopivka, and Solotka-Balka. Let's continue our report by analyzing the latest developments on the Donetsk front line. According to the latest reports, Russian attacks on the Donetsk front line continue intensively here as well. The most important problem of the Russian army here is the war strategies applied on the front line. Before addressing the conflict zones, let's talk about the situation of the Russian army. According to reports, units of the Russian armed forces are still using the strategy of meat attacks. The meat attack strategy causes Russian troops to suffer heavy losses. Of course, these attacks pose a separate problem for the soldiers serving in the Russian troops. The Russian army is very worn out. This is a great advantage for the Ukrainian armed forces. It is likely that the Russian troops will enter the area where Ukrainian troops have withdrawn without following security protocols. The Ukrainian army should use the ambush strategy in this area as well. In this way, both Russian losses will increase and the Ukrainian army will have the opportunity to make more offensive maneuvers. The latest situation in the region is that units of the Russian armed forces are attacking Novomykhailovka from the southeast and the northeast. However, the clashes in the area are less furious than in recent days. The units of the Russian armed forces also carried out attacks on the Ukrainian positions near Pobeda and both banks of the Osivko River from the Marinka direction. Here, the tactical objective of the Russian armed forces is to advance towards Gorgorivka. The operational objective is the center of the Ukrainian armed forces in Kurhakov. There are also clashes in Novolsky. We cannot talk about any border changes here for the time being. Troops of the Russian armed forces also attacked Pervomaisk after strong attacks with the long-range weapons. Russian troops also attacked Avdiivka from the east, from Kurtaya Balka, and from the northeast near the Cook factory. There was also an attempt to break the crossing of 3 railway lines near Novobakhmutovka, controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces. So far, however, we don't see any new territorial changes on the Donetsk front line. Let us continue by mentioning the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest reports, Ukrainian positions in Zaporizhia and Novokalinov were hit by the artillery units of the Russian armed forces. In turn, artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted the Russian positions in Vodyany and the village of Krasnohorivka. Today was a quiet day for the artillery units. Let's continue with the latest developments on the Bakhmut front line. According to the latest reports, on the Bakhmut front line, units of the Russian armed forces continued offensive operations on the northern and southern lines of the Bakhmut front line. When we look at the latest reports, we see that the Russian attacks are intense, especially in the direction of Klishchivka and Andreevka. Despite all the efforts, they still have not been able to make any progress. A similar situation exists on Bogdanivka and Horomov on the northern flank of the Bakhmut. However, Ukrainian troops continue to resist in these regions as well. No border changes have been reported so far. Let's look at the Luhansk front line. According to the latest reports, counter-battles of varying successes are taking place on the Luhansk front line in the Serebyanki forested area south of Dniprova. There are mutual successes on both sides. However, no significant border changes have been reported so far. On the other hand, the Russian armed forces are attacking near Terniv. There was no attempt to break through the Ukrainian defense line at the Shinkiivka with the support of long-range weapons, but the Russian troops failed and withdrew. What do you think? Do you think the Ukrainian army should adopt the ambush strategy? Will this strategy bring success to the Ukrainian army? How do you assess the problems in the Russian army? Let me know in the comments. You know that I read and I care about all your comments.